to, thanks, Jill. I want to welcome everyone today. This is a big day for sustainability planning in the United States among the respite community. And we're going to hear from Deana Prest and Abby. Okay.
Derepentigny.
Derepentigny. I've been practicing before you got on the phone and I had the pronunciation right. Abby Derepentigny. We're going to hear from them in a minute. I want to do a little housekeeping first. And first, let's just do a quick go around and say hello to everyone who's here. Most of you know me. I'm Susan Summers, and I facilitate the Learning Collaborative Planning Group for ARCH. And just hop in, say hello to people and let them know where you're from.
Hi, it's Marilyn Sword, and I am with the Idaho Caregiver Alliance, and I am keeping my video off today, but I'm really interested to hear what Deana has to say.
Okay. Welcome, Marilyn. Thanks for being here.
I'll jump in. I'm Talina Ford with Oklahoma Department of Human Services, and my video is going to be off today, so you guys don't get to experience me coughing and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I've been blowing my nose for allergies. We have the same issues going on. Well, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
And I'm Lynn Fines. I'm with the Idaho Commission on Aging and work closely with Marilyn Sword, and I'm really interested in hearing what Deana has to say today.
Okay, welcome, Lynn. Thanks for being here.
I'm Nadine Walter. I'm with Talina out of Oklahoma. We have 3-year and 5-year lifespan respite grants and the Oklahoma Caregiver Coalition.
Thanks, Nadine. Good to see you.
Hey, I am Melissa Price, and I'm with South Carolina Respite Coalition.
Hi, Melissa. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Nick Slentz. I'm with the Virginia Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services. We're the current recipient of the 5-year lifespan respite that we were awarded last year, and I'm also the facilitator for the Virginia Caregiver Coalition. And I also oversee the use of our Title III National Family Caregiver Support Program funds.
Welcome, Nick. And Nick said some brilliant things on yesterday's performance measurement. I said I lobbied him to be here. I want his mind to be part of this group. So thanks for being here. Have I missed anyone? Okay. Before we start with Deana and Abby, who you'll meet in more depth, just a little housekeeping. I'm going to be away on meditation for 3 weeks, and the Sustainability Learning Collaborative is right in the middle of that. So no meeting in July. We typically don't meet in August, so I'm just putting it out to the group. Do you want to meet in August, or would you like to wait till September for the next meeting? What are people's travels plans the end of August? What do you all think? What are your druthers? Anyone have strong feelings? It's okay to take a vacation if you want to, and we'd love to meet with you if you'd rather. You're all so polite.
And I am planning on visiting Area 1, our Northern Idaho facility, at the end of August. So the end of August could be tricky for me. And this is Lynn from Idaho.
Okay. How about other people? Do you have plans? Or let's go ahead and schedule it. And this is a good group for just checking in. So let's schedule a check-in in August. And if it's a short meeting, that's fine, and we'll really gear up for September.
But no meeting in July, Susan?
No meeting in July.
Okay.
Have a nice break, everyone. Now for the really exciting, I'm so excited about this presentation from New York. From Deana Prest and Abby, I'm going to get it right, Derepentigny. They're going to talk about their sustainability plan. They're the first state in the nation to have completed a formal sustainability plan, and I applaud them. They're also,
as far as we know.
They're also going to talk about the process. And just a word before they start. I started with working for Jill and working for ARCH, studying the states that got sustainability planning grants. And one of the remarkable things to me was how brilliant and creative and hardworking everyone was, and how none of them achieved a plan, a written plan at the end of that. And there were many reasons why, but it struck me as that how much more complicated this process is and how nuanced it is. And it's not like writing a grant, which is hard enough, but this is much more complicated, and that's why people struggle with it. It's why they're intimidated by it. So in addition to just having the plan, Abby and Deana have a lot of insight and wisdom to share with us about that. And for that, I'm grateful. And now let's just hear from them.
Thank you, Susan. Nothing like a lot of pressure.
There's no pressure in this group.
Okay, I'm just going to pull up our PowerPoint. So bear with me. Everybody can see it okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So as Susan said, I'm Deana Prest, work at the New York State Office for the Aging. I am the project director for Lifespan Respite, but I too oversee our National Family Caregiver Support Program for New York State, and along with some other state-funded caregiver-related programs. And Abby works alongside of me. I got her 3 years ago, and I'm thrilled. She's a great asset to the team. So today we're talking about sustainability planning. I'm sorry that Doris Green couldn't be here with us, because she really is, a big driver of a lot of this work. Very passionate, and I would say that I've been in the position 5 years. I think Doris came on in 2016, just a year or two before me. But really, we recognized right away that the planning process for sustainability it evolves over time, as Susan said, right? Like there's always different changes that come into play that really causes you to have to be like, okay, what does this do for our plan when it comes to sustainability? Some of it could be that something might present itself for some additional funding opportunity, but it could also be that funding was cut. So having to really kind of go through this dynamic process and really think through all of those factors. It's been an interesting ride, I will tell you. I mean, we've been working on this since 2018. And we're thrilled that we have a written plan. We did start with a goal of, what did this exactly mean for us in New York? Like, what were we aiming to do, and where were we aiming to get to? And so our goal was to connect with statewide partners to exchange knowledge, our expertise, ideas, and really ultimately all of that leading us to developing an initial statewide strategy for sustaining our respite care system in New York. Our purpose, you can see here, we kind of talked through like, okay, we got to strengthen the state and community partnerships to sustain these particular activities that we were involved in as part of our grant. We got to develop strategies to maximize the use of existing respite resources. We needed to really identify and leverage new respite funds. And then the engaging in that sustainability planning, which we're going to dive into of more of the details of how we went about that. And then generating innovative activities for future development. So I got to say, Jill, you were great in helping us, because I really think that we kicked things off in 2018 by having a summit in New York State that was statewide in Albany. And we really had it called a sustainability summit, because we wanted to engage those stakeholders as well. And that kind of kicked things off for us, of having a day that we spent in hearing from a panel of caregivers, hearing from all of the different systems within New York State, from government representation, of talking about like what existed currently with their programs that delivered respite, so that we could kind of gain a better understanding of like where we are now and what some of the barriers are, and hearing from all of these partners in trying to figure out what would be a best way of working together. So that kind of kicked us off in 2018. And then from there, we decided to take the ARCH toolkit to really guide our work with the smaller group of our core team, and this is the New York State Office for the Aging, our statewide coalition, NYSERC, another key partner that works with us on this initiative, Monroe County Office for Aging, because the coalition is actually housed within their county out in the western part of New York State, Rochester. So we took the toolkit, kind of went through, looked at it. It was a little overwhelming. I think many others that have talked about it, you know, it was great in getting us organized and thinking through like, okay, but each module of like what we really needed to set ourselves up to do, to accomplish and be successful. So we kind of made the decision that we were going to do these annual retreats, because we really felt like in order to be successful with all of this strategic planning of thinking about sustainability, we needed all the day-to-day work to just be kind of, you know, away from us, so we could really concentrate and roll up our sleeves, do the hard work. So we actually in 2019 had our first retreat out in Rochester, where Doris really kind of took lead in scheduling that. And we all were in agreement that we felt like it was worth our time and money to really have a facilitator. Because we were like, you know, if we do this on our own, we were worried we would go round and round and round and not get anywhere. So we really felt like it was a good use of our, you know, a portion of our funds to invest in actually paying a facilitator to work with us through all the modules of the toolkit. So the coalition did contract with a paid facilitator who happened to also be our evaluator for the grant. And I think that that was actually a benefit because, you know, he didn't need to be brought up to speed on what it is that we are trying to achieve, like with all of these grants that we had been receiving. And I will share that we've been getting Lifespan Respite grants since 2010, you know, so we kicked this effort off in 2019. So we had a good 9 years under, you know, ourselves, with a lot of work that had been accomplished, but never really in a written plan or memorialized anywhere in one comprehensive document. So so the first retreat and pretty much every retreat after that, until we get to what Abby's going to talk to you about, because we had another one this past spring. But we had these objectives that, you know, led our work. And we really wanted to examine the effort in coalition building through the coalition, including opportunities for membership expansion and enhanced engagement. We wanted to review sustainability self-assessment core elements and score the progress that's indicated in that self-assessment. I will tell you, for me personally, just as part of the team who worked on this, that was probably the hardest part. And I will say that we were vastly different in our scoring from the state office and our coalition. When we went through the exercise of like sharing, you know, how we assessed ourselves, we were nowhere near close in a lot of areas, which was surprising, but I think also helpful, just of knowing like where we needed to focus. We wanted to discuss performance measures to, you know, evaluate our progress in the planning and implementation. And we wanted to really develop those action steps so that we could, you know, take something actionable away from this work and figure out how to come up with this statewide sustainability plan. We wanted to identify the state level policy and program needs related to respite care services for, you know, all populations to increase our advocacy capacity. And we wanted to strengthen the state and community partnerships for that advocacy effort for caregivers across the lifespan, and of course, identify potential challenges to sustainability. So these objectives here were the objectives that led our work from 2019 all the way up until this past retreat, which Abby is going to share with you. We really did switch up the objectives on our last retreat in April. So our outcomes and deliverables, we were able to develop a sustainability roadmap. So something concrete to, you know, kind of have it all documented and laid out nicely for us. And we're going to share with you the written sustainability report. I call it a report, and you'll hear why in a minute, but I feel like there wasn't a lot about the future in that, which is kind of what led us to having another retreat this past April. I felt like it was a great, like I said, comprehensive documentation of all the great work we've been doing over 10 years and how we've been able to sustain certain things, which is great. But I felt like it needed more of those looking forward and, okay, so now what, and how do we continue to sustain and grow? So we also walked away with a sustainability logic model and financing strategies logic model. And we also had sustainability summit advocacy priority areas. So those are the things that came out of our retreats for 2019, 2020, 2021. So those were the 3 retreats that we used the toolkit for all of that work. The sustainability summits that we held, as I mentioned in 2018, we kicked things off before we even got into the smaller retreats with doing work. We had one summit, a statewide sustainability summit. And then this past year, we did do a second summit virtual. And really, we wanted to solicit feedback and establish those advocacy priorities to guide future sustainability work. And that was, really what we were after with holding the statewide summits. So that leads me to share that, yes, Susan's correct. We have a written sustainability report that's really reflective of all the work that we've been able to accomplish. We do consider it a living, breathing document, and it did end up resulting in another retreat. Although it was a great product, we were very excited and very proud of everything that we had done. There was more work to do. We really felt like, okay, we got through the toolkit. We were able to get a written plan, a written, report of all the sustainability work. But we felt like we needed to do more work in thinking about the future, especially because there was some new funding opportunities. There was COVID that happened and how that kind of, adjusted some of the work. So I'm thrilled that we have this nice packaged report, and we will definitely share it with everybody because it does contain a lot of really great information about the successes that we've had. But I'm really thrilled too that we now also have a written plan for some additional sustainability work moving forward, over the next year. And I say year because what we also found through all of this is we don't want to stop meeting at every year, because we're really realizing that things are changing, right? There's staffing changes, there's funding opportunity changes, there's, things that come up that we learn through these learning collaboratives that all kind of factor in and make us realize the importance of us taking that time out once a year and spending a day together to do strategic planning and figuring out where are the areas that we need to think about, how we're going to sustain the work and grow the work. So we'll likely meet again next spring, and we'll likely, continue to add to our written sustainability plan. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Abby, and Abby, just tell me when to advance the slides, but she's going to talk to you about what came out of our April retreat, which we're really excited about.
Thanks, Deana. Hi, everyone. I'm Abby Derepentigny. I work with Deana at the New York State Office for the Aging. As Deana mentioned, the sustainability report that was developed by our evaluator led us to our 4th sustainability retreat, where the core team continued to work on our sustainability plan. So you can go to the next slide. Our 4th retreat was held this past April. It was nice. We were able to meet in person after a virtual retreat in 2020. So it's always nice to get together in person and brainstorm and bounce ideas off of one another. All members of the core team were represented at the retreat. So us from the State Office for the Aging, the Coalition was there, and the Monroe County Office for the Aging. And the goal of our 4th retreat was to support ongoing development and implementation of the statewide action plan for sustaining the respite care system across the lifespan. And the retreat was intended to review the progress that we've made for sustainability, revise the sustainability roadmap to account for changes, identify new opportunities for funding and expansion, and to identify potential barriers to ongoing sustainability. Next slide. So on this slide, we have our objectives for the retreat listed here. So the first thing we did, we debriefed from the Sustainability Summit, which was held in October 2021. That was the second one that was virtual. The core team noted successes and challenges of the summit and discussed, stakeholder groups that might be missing at these summits. So kind of came up with a plan of maybe some groups that we might want to invite if we do decide to do a third summit. We also discussed coalition building, the impacts of COVID-19 on sustainability. We reviewed and revised our logic models, which I'll discuss a little bit more later. And we developed an action plan for future sustainability planning. One big thing we discussed at the retreat was membership. We've been talking for quite some time about membership and how it could help to sustain the coalition. And in our research over the years, we found a really good example of membership from the Florida Respite Coalition. So we reviewed this at the retreat and we had a discussion around the things that were included in Florida's example. So we talked about membership dues, having organizations sign a letter that they agree with the mission and vision of the coalition, listing those organizations who want to be members on the NYSERC website, offering incentives to those who are members, such as a table at one of the NYSERC's conferences, the ability to submit articles for the newsletter. We talked about spotlighting certain organizations in the newsletter, a bunch of other things that the member, if we did decide to go with a membership campaign, that the members could be offered. We were hoping to start the membership campaign in June, but as Deana mentioned, Doris, she's really busy with some grant opportunities that have popped up. So we're hoping to use the conference in August as an opportunity to gain coalition members, and we plan to do some marketing, webinars, updates to the website so that organizations understand what it means to be a member of the coalition. And some more things that we talked about was like the mission and vision of membership, the structure, and different resources. So next slide. And we also discussed development of a business plan at the retreat, which is another item we've been thinking about for some time, but haven't had an opportunity to really fully discuss it. So we talked about the differences between a sustainability plan, a business plan, and a strategic plan, and the importance of all three. And our hope is to develop a business plan in the future that incorporates elements of strategic planning and sustainability planning, as well as opportunities for future growth. Next slide. And finally, we discussed future funding opportunities. And a key takeaway from this discussion was that significant progress has been made since our previous retreats. In the earlier years, the team, we struggled to come up with funding opportunities that would help sustain the coalition beyond the federal grant funds. But like I mentioned earlier, Doris is currently working on two grants that would give the coalition some additional funding. The first is an AmeriCorps Senior Demonstration Program grant. So we originally were in conversations with AmeriCorps. We wanted to submit a proposal for an RFA that they had put out. And it ended up we weren't able to apply for that, but they wanted to work with us on this proposal that I'll share in a second. But so it's a senior demonstration program grant, and the proposal is a regional approach to expand respite. So NYSERC's volunteer respite network was decimated by COVID, as I'm sure many others were. So for this proposal, the coalition developed a multi-pronged approach to build upon by adding volunteer coordinators in targeted regions of the state. So the volunteer coordinators would scan the communities that they're in, find out where there's gaps and struggles, begin to recruit volunteers, and then connect volunteers to volunteer respite opportunities within that region. And the volunteers will be stipend volunteers and will need to use the respite worker training, which is part of the Wisconsin pilot project that New York is part of, in order to become a volunteer. So that's a little bit about our proposal for AmeriCorps, and it's due today. So hopefully it works out well and the coalition will get funded. And then another opportunity Doris is applying for is a grant through the Exhale program. And this proposal is, they're hoping to provide a toolkit for universities to do service learning and use volunteers for respite. So they're working with a local college, St. John Fisher, as a partner in the grant. And they plan to bring students from all different types of majors so that they buy into the idea of community respite. And we also brainstormed other potential funding opportunities, such as state funding, foundations, other grants. Next slide. So as a result of the brainstorming, we ended up revising our existing logic model just based on also some new initiatives that the team is working on. So you can see here on the slide the new activities, indicators, and performance measures that were added. And you'll see the updated logic model in the, so we'll share the plan, and then we also have a report for this 4th retreat, and you can see the additions to the logic model in that report. Next slide. And we also revised our financing strategies logic model at this retreat. Again, we added additional performance measures and revised the funding levels due to the new opportunities that presented themselves to the coalition. Next slide. And so then we came up with next steps for sustainability planning. We hope to have more brainstorming sessions related to membership for the coalition. We're going to review the overall structure of the NYSERC subcommittees and consider an opportunity to consolidate the committees. Right now, there's 4 subcommittees of NYSERC and advocacy, help me, Deana, training.
I think advocacy is the one they were trying to launch from our summit from last year, but yeah, there's training. I think there's outreach.
Yeah. And I can't think of the other one off the top of my head.
But they've been struggling with keeping them active. So I think that there was some discussions about, maybe restructuring to help with that.
Yeah. And consolidating the committees. And then, so we're also planning right now for a working caregiver conference, which is going to be held in Rochester in August. It's also a hybrid event. So if people can't get to Rochester, they can attend virtually as well. It's through the Whova app, but the focus is on the benefits for working caregivers. And we're starting the pre-conference on August 9th with a working caregiver simulation. So I'm not sure if you all have participated in a simulation, but I'm sure you've heard us talk about it before, but they're revising the scenarios to be more specific for working caregivers. So we're going to do that on August 9th, and then on August 10th will be the actual conference session. And the keynote speaker is Liz O'Donnell, who is the founder of The Working Daughter, and also Alexandra Drain from Archangels is going to be speaking. So that should be a really great conference. And then 4th, we're going to be considering planning for a 3rd sustainability summit in 2023 after the conference. And then last, we'll focus on the new opportunities that come about with any funding opportunities and things like that. Does anybody have any questions? Or Deana, if you want to add anything that I might have missed, feel free.
I was just going to put a plug in because I'm sure some of you are not familiar with our caregiver wellness and respite center pilot project that was mentioned in a couple of Abby's slides. So if you are interested, we are planning to speak at a workshop at the national conference in Madison, Wisconsin. So just wanted to let you can learn more there, but we are piloting a caregiver wellness and respite center in the North Country area of our state in a 6-county region. And we are opening our doors officially. I say opening our doors. I'm not really sure how many caregivers are going to come in person, but they have 2 locations within that region. And July 1st, they officially open their doors to, start working with caregivers. They are required to use TCare as their caregiver assessment tool. And they are going to be offering, services really across the board, training, support groups, counseling, respite care, and other, maybe individualized needs that they might have that they can provide services for. So we're really excited about that. And our hope is that, if it's successful and effective, that we can then advocate to replicate regional centers across our state. So just wanted to add that because I'm sure some of you were like, I wonder what that's all about. But you can certainly learn more by coming to our workshop. That was all I had, but I think you covered the rest well, Abby. So we'll take questions.
And I just put the link to register for the caregiver conference in the chat. So if anybody's interested in attending that.
I do have a question. This is Lynn from Idaho. And I know you mentioned, you're from the Office of Aging, as so are we. How do you get these other lifespan agencies to get involved?
I would say a lot of that comes from the coalition. They do the most, boots on the ground trying to make connections. But I will say we've actually had some great success too. We just with like some projects that we've worked on, with our sister agencies, our caregiver guide for business with the Department of Labor really opened up doors, I think, of, recognizing the resources that are available for working caregivers and, how important this partnership could be for the business themselves in creating a more healthy workplace environment. And I think that's a lot of what went behind why we went with the theme we did for this year's conference and focusing on a very, very different audience, right? So we're trying to get the managers and the HR professionals in our seats at this conference to help them better understand how they can be of support to their employees who are juggling this role. But I don't know, I'm trying to think, Abby. I feel like a lot of our work, well, and some of it's me just, I tend to knock on a lot of doors and have a big mouth often. Like I don't know. I just, I'm not pushy, but I do very much take every opportunity to just really express a need of getting involved and like why it would benefit and, just let's work together. Let's collaborate together. Another good example that we'll share, because we didn't know this, we just had Mary Jo Caruso come on one of our monthly caregiver coordinator webinars, which is really, all of our local staff that oversee the National Family Caregiver Support Program. But Doris, the coalition, is invited and is on the agenda every month to give updates of the coalition and, ways that they can use the coalition in their everyday work. But when we were talking with Mary Jo about, this opportunity to present on volunteer programs, volunteer respite programs, in our test call, I guess you would say, we always work with our, with our speaker and making sure they're comfortable with the technology and that, they don't have questions. And when we were chatting with her, she actually asked if we had an existing relationship with, what is the name of the program? Abby, help me out now.
The Child Abuse Prevention Bureau, Office of Children and Family Services.
And we had no idea who this person was. She gave us his name. He's in our state listserv to be able to look up his email address. And we're like, we don't know him, but we should get to know him. Let's get connected. So we sent an email, introducing ourselves, and he's willing to have a call with us next week. So I think some of it at our level, is really just, having to knock on a lot of doors, which it is time consuming and we juggle a lot of balls and we're sometimes more successful than others. But I would say that's what we're doing now with Doris and her team at the coalition. They have a lot more opportunity to be out and about at various events. Our state office, I will say, though, is very supportive of that too. Like we had our kickoff events last week, and they were almost a bit informal, I would say, where it was kind of a meet and greet. It was like, we're bringing this caregiver wellness and respite center to your community. Come out and see us, meet us, hear about it. Pick up some literature and, they had some gadgets and things, a bag and, water bottles, stuff like that. And our office let us go so that we could be out there to support our partners, to meet the people, you know, to really, you know, do the cheerleading of like, this is, you know, super exciting. We can't wait for this to launch. So we're lucky in that regard that I feel like our, you know, management and our agency is just super supportive of us, like being heavily involved in the work, which is great.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the child abuse prevention, because, you know, that really expresses the whole entire lifespan, because we're so focused on the Older Americans Act and aging. We really need to open that up. So that's important.
Please know too that Arch has many, many resources to help you connect with agencies across the lifespan. In fact, the CBCAP, the Community-Based Child Abuse Prevention Program, is one of our major partners, and the Friends National Resource Center, which Mary Jo works for, is a sister agency with Arch. We share a lot of staff and work. So if you ever have trouble figuring out who it is you need to reach out to in your state across agencies, we have tons of information. We have our Federal Guide to Funding book that lists all the possible state agencies that fund respite and are interested in respite, with state examples of how those funds are used and who the contacts are. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need that information also. I mean, that's one of the main reasons that we're here, is to help you bridge those gaps across ages and disability, state agencies, and private organizations.
Thank you, Jill and Deana and Abby and Susan.
Other questions? I'd like to know what was unexpectedly challenging for you. Like what were the stumbling blocks?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like we did have some. Well, Doris and I always say to get, you know, it's interesting because, and it's been brought up on other things too, about like, you know, we work really well together, but I will tell you, we are so polar opposite. Like, I think we balance each other, you know, like Doris is you know, really hardworking, and she just like pounds, like wants to get things done, very task driven. And we're like the big picture planning, right? So I feel like that there's a lot of like, you know, where we go back and forth and try to, come to some sort of middle ground, right? Where we're like, okay, I hear you. We want to get you what you want to do, but like, let's pull it back and talk it through a little bit more of like doing some really careful planning of how to get to where you want to be, you know? So I feel like sometimes that can be challenging, because I think, you know, we both have very strong personalities, right? But I think in some ways we just really complement one another. And I feel like sometimes, right, that makes such a difference with success, is just who you have working at the things you're working at. So, but I don't know, Abby, can you think of like, I guess just for me in the beginning, when I first came in the position, I pulled the very first sustainability plan draft that was done. And it was 2 paragraphs, and she didn't even know existed. I like sent it to Doris and I go, have you seen this before? And she's like, nope, never seen it. Like, so some of the having to kind of, you know, get to a good starting point, because we didn't even really know like the work that had been done previously and where to start, right? Like I was like, where do we even begin? Because we didn't want to duplicate things, but we also felt like things kind of got left in limbo. The person in my position, the position was vacant for a year before I came into it. So that was challenging in itself for me, just of like doing the research of trying to figure out where things got left off and where we like, you know, try to kick things off again. But Abby, I don't know, do you have anything that you can add?
No, yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think too, when I first came to the Office for the Aging, I like the Lifespan Respite Grant, I was like, I don't even understand like what any of this is. And I think like now we have 2 grants, and I feel, you know, like the more that I work at it, the more we understand it. But we have 2 grants going at the same time right now. So I think trying to make sure we meet all of the deliverables in 2 grants while planning for sustainability. I think it's just, we have a lot going on. I mean, we're getting there, but it's a lot to juggle and balance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the price of success, Abby.
But
You
when
have-
you reflect, like at that last meeting in April, when we started to reflect on our very first finance strategies logic model, and then like looking at now, it was like, and I'm sure some of it was just the influx of money with, you know, the pandemic, but it was kind of like, they weren't sure how they were going to reach a certain level to be able to like sustain this current staff they had. And it has grown, I don't even know, like probably 10 times of what we were looking at and working on, you know, just a few years ago. So that was amazing. Like we took a moment and really like took that in, and we were like, wow, who would have thought that we'd be here right now and trying to figure out how we're going to staff up and get all this work done, you know, because they're really expanding with hiring more staff too.
Yeah, I think the minimum level we had was like $100,000, and that would be like the bare bones of like supporting like one staff and doing the minimum, like offering the minimum from the coalition. And now we have, our lowest is like $1 million, you know, so there's just been so much growth and so many opportunities. It's
Yeah.
really great to reflect on that.
It seems like when I was hearing you talk, and this is a question maybe, it seems like when you bring money in, you really think about how you're going to use it in a way that supports your planning. In other words, there's real intentional, real intention behind what you want to do and how you're going to fund it, rather than just like randomly going for money and kind of plugging wherever, that the money follows from the planning. I think that's what I'm seeing. Do you think that's true? Like has the planning helped you figure out what kind of money you need and how you're going to use it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about, so one of the priorities for the coalition is advocacy. And, you know, we've really been struggling. How can we do advocacy? And Doris now was invited into a Grant Makers and Aging Collaborative, which has a strong focus on advocacy. And there's some funding associated with that. I'm not sure how much, but yeah, I think that's like a good example of that.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I think that the nice thing is that when these funding opportunities present themselves, we can't always support them. And the AmeriCorps one's a good example of that, where initially, because the pool of volunteer respite workers was under our Lifespan grant, right? It was natural for the coalition to come to us and say, we want to go after this, but there's a match involved. Do you think that you guys could help meet the match? And unfortunately, we couldn't, but because the work is still kind of falling under that umbrella, they were able to get the foundation out in the western part of the state to work with them and help them with the match, but yet we're still involved with the planning of the proposal. So it's like, you know what I mean? So even though like we might not be able to fund something or be directly involved and be a named partner in that proposal, because of the work being tied, we're like, they still involve us with, you know, figuring out if it seems to make sense and if we have anything that we think would strengthen the application, you know. So that's nice too, where I feel like that makes a big difference.
Yeah, they respect what you have to bring to the table. Yeah.
I think that's an interesting point. I mean, how would they help with match? I'm curious, would it be, you know, I'm curious to explore that opportunity. That's a great idea.
Yeah. And you know, we felt badly because we cover the match for, you know, for Lifespan Respite, and you know, we have some general funds where, and even some smaller grants, like we've been able to do that. But for this one, that just some of it was the timing, because like Abby shared, we have 2 Lifespan Respite grants right now that we just didn't have it. And because it's actually a pretty big funding opportunity. I think they were going after 500,000, right, for 3 years or something. Is that right, Abby?
Yeah, and I think originally they wanted to try to do a 5-year, so it was even more.
Yeah, it
but
was even more. Originally, they were thinking they could do a 5-year and it ended up going down to a 3-year. But AmeriCorps is like super supportive of this concept. I think they see the need. They recognize like what happened with us and having grown the Rest Initiative. So we felt horrible because we believed in what they wanted to do, right? We knew that it was like a value, but we just didn't have the ability to cover the match. So thankfully, right, with all the partnerships that they've established through other work, they were able to explore some other options in the foundation, like, yep, this fits, we're gonna provide it for you. I think they were able to come up with a little bit through some in-kind, but not much of it because they're housed in a not-for-profit. So the foundation is a named partner. They are involved, but yet they are still including us, which is wonderful, because I think they see the work all connecting, and so we still get invites to their kind of brainstorm sessions or TA calls, because it's not just them submitting the proposal without support. They're actually helping them, craft the proposal, which is great. But so we're excited about that. And I think that does make a difference.
Yeah, I can see why they respect you as partners. I mean, I just watching your team, and one thing that you said that really struck me. So the Lifespan Respite in New York started, the coalition or the grant started in 2010, the first grant. And the sustainability planning started in 2018. And then the first summit was in 2019. So those of you who are like earlier on in your development, or have had like a rupture in your development, it's a long game. You have to, I think that's what happened in the 3-year funded projects. The states were at different places, and they couldn't pull it off in 3 years. And 3 years sounds like a long time, but you have a really strong team and you've been diligent, and it just takes that long to keep going, but it's worthwhile every step along the way. It's not, I mean, what I take from New York is it's not just this written plan, which was, like you said, the report wasn't the main thing. It's that whole process. And the other thing that I really get when I hear you all talk, you talked about the differences between you and Doris, for example. I just think those complementary skills are so important. It's like when I started at a respite program, a local respite program, but a small one in Oregon, I worked for a woman named Jean Phelps, who was very social and very, very well connected. And I was finishing my doctorate at University of Oregon. I had a 90% hit rate for grants. I ran the university school. So I knew how to go in there and train and support students, and I could bring money in. But she really taught me about community connections and advocacy. We had everybody from the state legislature coming down, going through the program. I joined the junior league. I'm not really a junior league kind of girl, but and then those women were like, doers, movers and shakers in the community, and like they got involved. And so I learned so much from having someone who was so completely different from me and who I just grew to adore. And I took some of those skills with me when I left, when I went to the university. Like Deana, I just started knocking on doors. I just would go park in people's office and have conversation with them and have a coffee with them. So if you're not that social person, I'd say find somebody who can go out and knock on doors. And the other thing that that I've just observed about New York that I think is so important to sustainability is you mentioned not just having this 2-paragraph sustainability plan, and the person before you, Deana, had been there a year. And I think you're leaving, when you go eventually, you leave a legacy in writing. The next person that comes in after you is not going to have to start totally from scratch, because you have, you've left a paper trail. You have such strong relationships. And I just see your team, you and Doris and Abby, and I've met some other people in your team, like Tom. And there's so much collaboration and respect among your team members, and these are not part of the the toolkit. You know, these are just these are leadership qualities that you all bring and nurture in one another. And I think that's very remarkable and really important. Other people, what do you take from New York that you can use in your states, or what does this spark for you in your thinking? Lynn talked about the matching. That's really important. Marilyn in the chat talks about the legacy trail being so important. Often programs and projects are person dependent, and when the person leaves, the project falls. Yeah, we've really seen this in respite. Those of you who haven't actually done the planning yet, are you inspired or intimidated? What's your take?
I feel like it's going to be a little bit of both on the inspired and intimidated. I'm excited to go through the PowerPoint. So thanks for sending the slides and kind of dig into looking through that a little bit more. But I really appreciate y'all sharing what y'all are going through, because I think it's something that's so relevant to all of us. I know a lot of those topics have come up in our conversations just time and time again here in South Carolina. So it was very, very important for me to be able to hear that. And so I appreciate y'all's time sharing it. But yeah, a little intimidated too.
Yeah, but
Get
Melissa,
a paid facilitator. That's all. If you take away nothing, take away that. It really helped guide us. We needed it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
and that facilitator had the content and was not afraid of, he used the toolkit, which can feel kind of daunting, but he wasn't afraid of that because he's the university guy that does that stuff. So that's like really important. But I'm so glad you asked that question, and I just want you to know, this group in particular, they're so generous with one another. So don't be afraid to call people in this group to ask good questions. This is, you have to have friends when you do this, in in the network and your team. You have to really support each other. It's just too hard otherwise. It's too lonely. It's not fun. So find your friends. Yeah. And it takes time to make them, so yeah.
Thank you.
I want to remind people too, this is Jill, that if you came into a Lifespan Respite grant as the manager and you didn't have a lot of written history there for you to rely on and look back toward, please contact Arch, because we may have all of that or much of it to share with you. For example, Nick just posted, I think we have a long way to go in Virginia. You may not know, Nick, that Virginia was one of our exemplar states for undertaking the sustainability planning toolkit. And they under Ellen now, made quite a bit of progress in that arena. And I have a lot of those materials, and I'd be more than happy. I mean, a lot of them are up on the website, but I know our website is not the easiest place to navigate right now. But I'd be happy to share those materials with you, and they might be very, very helpful to you.
I am probably on Arch's website daily. So
I apologize.
No, I'm just constantly pulling up any of y'all's appendixes and manuals and downloading. So anyway, we can still find it. It's just, we got to dig a little.
I mean, right now there's so much information on there, and it's so hard to find that it's taking me months to move information from our old website to our new website that we were hoping to launch in July, but it's such a complicated process that unfortunately that is going to be delayed now. But I hope once we have that new website, it'll be a lot easier.
I could see that would take a very long time with all of the resources y'all have on there. Let's see that.
Deciding what can go and what can stay. It's really hard because it's historical perspective. I've realized so many states don't have that, and I'm afraid to throw anything away. I guess I'm a hoarder. So
in a
all
really
these
good way.
historical documents that we have that clog up our website, I think can also be very useful to somebody at some point. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure they're still available.
That reminds me, Nick, I did the interviews for Virginia. I still have notes. Jill's taught me to be a hoarder too. So I'm going to just go back and try and dig up notes from, I have a recording somewhere too. Just to give you a historical perspective that, you know, maybe there's something useful in there. I'll see if I can find anything that just will take you kind of back to that time of, it was a time of transition. There was leadership change at the end of that sustainability planning project. So I don't know, that might help you, but definitely call one another and, you know, offer each other support, because it's just too difficult if you're just muddling along by yourself. It's just not fun enough to keep you going, and you have to have fun to keep you going.
I think we talked to 3 states before we did our first sustainability summit. I mean, Jill was a great help, you know, too, with helping us kind of, you know, get organized of like what we needed to think through and coming up with an agenda and everything. But we did talk to like 2 or 3 other states. And that was very, very helpful.
What I love about these is that, you know, you go along and you're questioning yourself. And then when you hear other states are struggling with the same thing, you're like, oh, okay. You know, we always pick up a lot from you guys in New York on the programs. I mean, our voucher program is really strong here in Oklahoma, but, you know, you're always juggling what can you add. And so we look at New York for a lot of your guidance on other respite activities. So good job, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Vice versa with you. I mean, you've just been so generous and such a leader. The other thing that I just want to comment on, and one of the things that New York did right away was talk about performance measurements, and the, you know, included measurement plan. And one of the things when I'm writing up state summaries, one of the things that stands out for me, and all the states here are reflected in this comment. You all care about what's actually happening in your programs. You use data that's useful to knowing what's going on. And that turns out to be really important for sustainability planning, because you can't sustain if you can't show the merit of your program, if you can't advocate for your program, and if you can't give feedback to people to let them know that they're doing a good job, or know how to support them in doing a better job. So, and everybody on this call is really strong in that regard. So I just want to point that out. That's a big part of the planning, and also just say thank you and for doing that, for your work, and that it's really impressive what you all do in that regard. So, any parting words of wisdom from New York, from anyone?
Thank you for having us. We're always happy to share, and we learn so much from all of you too. I love, you know, being part of these learning collaboratives.
So thank you, Deana. And you just got lots of compliments in the chat. If you want to feel good about yourself, give yourself a pat on the back.
You all made my weekend.
I was gonna say, good way to start your Friday.
It is. Okay. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you in August, we hope.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Take
have
care.
fun.
To see you all.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.